Hi, my friends. Welcome to another insightful episode of Me and My Health Up with your host, Anthony Harcher, a healthy man, according to my children, aka clinical nutritionist and lifestyle medicine specialist. The purpose of this podcast is to enhance and enlighten your well-being. And today we'll be chatting with an animal communicator, Kelly. Sorry, Kelly, I forgot to ask you how to pronounce your last name.
Mercia is fine.
Mercia. So I didn't want to get that terribly wrong. I'd much rather have a faux pas asking her. So anyway, uh, Mercia.
That's
Um,
correct.
yes, and so we're going to talk about how to better connect with your pets. Now, you're probably wondering about the relevance of this podcast. Why an animal communicator on a health and wellness podcast? Well, let me tell you why. Science tells us that connecting with animals helps us regulate our nervous system. And don't we need a bit of that at the moment, given what's going on with the pandemic? It helps calm us, it helps downregulate the nervous system. So when you're feeling agitated, a pet can calm you. So, if we better understand our pets' needs through effective communication, our level of connection deepens, and which would enhance the therapeutic relationship. So, hence why we have Kelly today. And Kelly is a professional animal communicator and healer. Kelly communicates energetically in a two-way conversation with the animals. And this amazes me. And that's why I've got her on today, because I really want to find out more. It intrigues me. She's able to do this with a photo or in person. So that's even more intriguing. Being highly empathetic, Kelly has always had a natural ability for listening and supporting people and animals. As a professional animal communicator, Kelly loves that she can give guidance to her clients and their animals in a challenging situation and be able to support them in a holistic approach. Kelly's passion is giving animals a voice, and she loves to help improve her clients and their animals' lives and help create a deeper connection and understanding between both of them. Welcome, Kelly. How are you today?
Thank you. I'm good. Thank you. How are you?
Fantastic, and so glad to
Good.
have you on. So, just like I do with all my other guests, I'm really keen to understand your story of how you have arrived at being an animal communicator. It fascinates me, and I'm sure it's fascinating the listeners.
Okay. There are a couple of reasons behind it. Or probably even more than that, but I'll start with some of them. Yeah. So I started on my spiritual journey, I guess, about 15 years ago. Doing lots of different study, self-development, and understanding myself more. And a lot of people talk about that, like they have a spiritual awakening. But we constantly have them. It's not just one. There's always another layer. So that kind of started me studying, and I actually used an animal communicator for some of my animals, and so that inspired me also. Um, because it was like amazing that I could have somebody support me in areas that there wasn't really anyone to do that. So yeah, that's kind of why I started doing it. Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah, we know how much communication is important for us social connectors, for social connection to develop relationships and how important that communication is. And, it will be the same with animals, given that, we're from the animal kingdom. And I guess, we can do it verbally, whereas animals, it's a lot different. And hence why I'm really intrigued as to how you can communicate with animals non-verbally. And it's probably in some way similar to how people that are either blind or deaf can continue having an amazing life, even though they've lost those senses. So yeah, really intrigued as to how you communicate with these animals.
Okay. And it is very interesting. And even though I am an animal communicator, I still love, and it sometimes it even surprises me if that makes it's amazing. So it's all energetically, and I know you spoke briefly about what I do. So And definitely communication is important. So with any relationship, whether it be human or animal, yeah, with better communication, we can understand each other better. So yeah, it's a great way to improve that. So I actually use my senses, like all my senses. So like I will connect with an animal telepathically and intuitively. So using energy, and that's why I can use a photo, and I'm trained that way to work with a photo or in person. And that's why there's no difference to me in, other than that I'm there with the animal, there's no difference in how the actual session is, if that makes sense. It's not like I will get more information from a photo or in person. It's pretty much the same. It's just a different way of doing it. So I will get visual like images. I can also get like here. So and then I can feel as well. So the animal I will ask them a question, and in that manner, and then they will send me back in their primary sense their answer to that question. So that's how I sort of work. Yeah.
It's probably very similar to when children, or well, babies, for example. I'm thinking, when a mother's constantly talking to that baby, it's similar, like, because they're not getting any feedback verbally from the baby other than maybe some noises. And we know dogs, cats, and all animals provide some sort of noise, but that mother baby connection is very much on that energetic level. And it's very similar to you you know and I guess pet owners do have those conversations, don't they? When there's no one else around, they'll be talking to the dog or the cat or the bird or the fish, and you're probably just allowing yourself that space to get the feedback back. And I think it's probably similar to when we in conversation, and those moments of pause, the pausing between what words or sentences, or you've said what you wanted to say. That moment of pause is where you're still communicating, but on a different level. It's just non-verbal, right?
It's exactly like that. And like definitely, and children generally up until a certain age do communicate with animals just like I do. And we lose a lot of that through society and just how we are taught differently. I mean, things are changing, and that's great. So people are learning to stay more connected, but that's exactly how it is. It's really just tuning in with that. And like I always, meditate before a session, and so to really quieten my mind. And I have steps that I take to be able to hold that session for the client and their animal. Yeah.
And so, yeah, please share some of these steps that you do in order to better communicate, because that can help on a personal level, when people are conversing, and being in that right frame of mind or that right state to best, to effectively communicate, essentially, at the best level. And so, even for those that don't have pets that are listening in, I think what Kelly does, and particularly I'm keen to hear her steps on how she gets herself into a certain state to be able to communicate at that deeper level, because you may be a mother with teenage children, and you're not getting many verbal cues back, right? Because teenagers, or particularly boys, they just grunt, and females may just be talking at a surface level, tip of the iceberg, and you're really thinking there's something I'm picking up that's deep down troubling them, but I cannot pick it up. And so I'm thinking, this, what you're about to share around your tips as to how you get yourself into this state to connect and to communicate at this deeper level will be important for anyone.
Yeah, definitely. And we are really all communicating with our animals, like you said, we do. Maybe we even don't realize it, but there'll be something that we're like, oh, they're your animal. So it's just, yeah, me doing it on a professional level and a deeper level. So my life is very much around, living every day so that I make sure I'm ready for, so I do self-healing. So I am a Reiki master, so I do Reiki on myself every day. So I have a certain routine, even just in the morning, where I will do that. I will meditate. So there's a lot of self-care taken into what I do too, which is great for my job, but also for me personally. So that's how it can benefit everyone, making time to meditate. And sometimes people say, oh, I don't have time. But that's really when we do need the time, because even if it's for 2 minutes every morning, and grounding yourself as well. So whether going outside, if that's not able to happen, because that's what I have to do before a session. So, just imagining, connecting to the center of the earth and things like that to ground yourself. That's very important as well. And staying in the present moment. So, and that doesn't mean things may come into your mind, but you just kind of let them come and go out. Yeah. So it's really having an empty, in a sense, empty, so that you can receive those messages. And and people, with energy, it can happen where you might think of this is a kind of an example to explain how I do it. Like you may be thinking of a friend or something, someone and you might run into them and you haven't seen them for a long time, or they might ring you, because I know often that will happen with me. And I'll ring a friend and I'll be like, how did you know I was having a hard time? So often, that's sort of an example. And it's like radio waves or the internet. You can't really see it, but it's traveling. So it's how I communicate energetically. Yeah.
Yeah, and I really like how what you shared in terms of those steps that you take to get you in the right state to receive those other signals, those other non-verbal signals of communication, is really having that, that deep-centered self-care, self-love, and being very present. And so you're constantly practicing that so that you have an empty cup and you're able to receive more signals. Whereas typically, if you think about the Western lifestyle, we're running around, we're constantly being bombarded with all this other information, and we've got so much clutter in our brains, and we're not allowing ourselves to process all that clutter, whereas you're giving yourself the space to receive the signals that everyone receives, but whether not they can connect with those signals is another question, because they've got so many other signals coming in, and it's sort of, who's calling the loudest, the phone rings or whatever. Whereas you're having that, allowing yourself the space, disconnecting with some of those other signals, and then reconnecting with these other, these signals, such as you said, the radio waves, the telepathy, that you pick up that, hey, that friend I'm sensing is not good, and I've got a feeling. And whereas other people cannot pick up on that because of this phone that's ringing, or this text message that keeps coming in, or something, like it's just constant bombardment. And I think what you do is essentially just give yourself that space and apply the self-care.
That's right. It's definitely that. And that is there are advantages to that for everybody. It can help with anxiety and all sort of those conditions. Making time for exercise, because I always do that. So making sure that every level, like emotionally, spiritually, physically, and mentally. So really keeping all those aspects. And that's very important. And people may, not because I do communicate with animals, but that is the whole aspect of the study and the work and the self-love and everything else. Yes, definitely. I have, work on that all the time, and it's a constant, it's an everyday thing. Yeah.
Yeah, so there's a couple of things that are coming to my mind. Well, firstly is the photo, and I'm intrigued by, how you said I can equally communicate via a photo as to what I, whether I'm physically present with the animal or I just have a photo of the animal. Simply because, it's two dimensions. There's, for me, what energy is being released from the photos. So and it's taken at a point in time. So it'd have to be a current photo, I assume, a very current photo. Yeah.
Yes. I will always, let the client, and I also need to see the animal's face. So it doesn't need to be like, I need to see their eyes, because that's sort of how I connect with them and make sure that, that it's the correct animal that I'm connecting with when I do connect. But and then I just do my steps, and then I always introduce myself and I ask permission that it's the owner has given me permission, and I always ask the animal too. And then before connecting, so it's not actually reading the animal, it is actually a two-way conversation, because I send them information and they send it back to me. So it is different to a psychic reading where you're just reading them. It's just like you and I here now, except doing it energetically.
Right. And so with the photo, you're reading the photo, but then communicating directly to that animal. But yeah, it's more that energetic. You're putting out energy, receiving energy, whilst looking at a photo. You're not actually, they're physically not present with you.
No. And I'm trained, and that's the way I've been trained as well, because I've studied with several different teachers, although I have a diploma with like the Simonley method. So that's how I'm actually trained to work with a photo or in person, so that we are because I have clients all over Australia and even internationally. So that enables me to be able to help like clients anywhere. And so it's just really the same. It's the same to me either way, whether in person or obviously it's great to go out and see the animals, because I get to be in their presence, and that's amazing because we have so many beautiful animals. But even with a photo, I'm like, every time I have a client, it's like, oh my gosh, we are so blessed with how amazing and beautiful each animal is, unique and beautiful. Yeah.
And share us in a recent example where you've helped a client, via a photo or being present with the animal. What sort of animal was it? What was the owner's concerns? And how you just share the experience, because I'm still really intrigued about how this all works.
Okay, so let me think about so a recent one I've done where I went out to a client was for their cat, and they just had concerns that the cat was being a little bit mischievous. And obviously animals are when they're, under a certain age, they're babies and they're learning. So I don't normally work with any animals sort of under 6 months, but over that age. And training is also very important, I must say, like if it's a dog training, or because they need structure. So I would help by going out, and the client will give me questions, so I will then ask the animal. So for instance, this cat was being, as I said, mischievous. So I talked to the cat about how it wasn't appropriate behavior. So kind of like how you may talk to your child in a sense, or, even in any relationship where you actually explain to somebody and communicate to them that how it affects them and how it affects who they're doing that to. Also just some safety things, some things like the cat was doing that may hurt itself, so explaining that. And also in a session I do healing, so that also helps. So there was an immediate change even in the cat. Usually, the client, if I'm not there, but I was there with their breathing, and they'll just be calmer. And generally sometimes they fall asleep too. So and I was doing some work and talking about, the cat was giving me signs even physically, actually, like moving their ears, and when I was actually talking about doing certain things with their ears. So that was very interesting. And so that's one case where I went out. And that was for animal communication and healing. Another case recently was I have helped a dog that was burnt in the bushfires, in the Bargo bushfires. So I've been working with her for a long time, actually. And I did healing and communication, and she helped her with her confidence and anxiety. So that's another, a lot of time where clients will contact me for that. And so it's better for the family and her, because she's become a much better, much more settled in the family. And they've all learnt both sides, like the animal has learned, the dog, because that's for a dog, and the family has also learned. So I give them both tools, and then it's up to the client also to implement those. So it does come with a session does come with responsibility for both people, or
And
both the animal and the person. Yeah.
which makes total sense.
Yeah, I don't just go in there and, wave a magic wand, although I do believe in magic. We actually do have to take steps and, negotiate that and work out a plan. I sort of call it a plan, and then, it is up to the client to then make sure that they do those steps, so that, because it takes time sometimes for behavior to change. But there are, I mean, you do see immediate changes, but it is over time, obviously, like anything.
Yeah, healing is a journey. It's
Correct.
and it requires time. So I totally understand, because it's communication's two ways. So it's important, like, you're communicating with the animal, but at the same time, the owner needs to understand and also better communicate with its, with the pet, whether it be a dog or cat. And if you don't, help the owner with its communication on a regular daily basis, then the problem could come back, right? So like often, parents and kids, so the kids will pick up on the parents' energy. So if the parents are really stressed, or vice versa, I mean, the kids could come home stressed and the parents get stressed by just feeling that energy, being radiated from the child. And likewise, if the parent has a bad day, they come home and it's the same, if the parent comes home and they're very stressed, then the animal will become stressed, right? Feeling, sensing that there's something not right and making them a bit fearful. So I can see why you leave both with the tools to then continue. So give us some examples of what these tools would involve. Like, are they ways to better communicate, or allowing time or space, or please share.
Okay, yeah. So some tools like would be like even teaching, like getting the animal to have its own space and even ground itself. So I will teach like that, and depending on the person also, I will give them that tool as well. I kind of tailor it to each person, but so then, because exactly what you said, energy, we all pick up on the energy, and then we can have past like traumas, and so that can come into it if you have a rescue animal. And then combining them together with the person, they already have their stress, and then the animal can be a great combination. So sometimes it may be just working more with the animal, although the owner will have steps, and sometimes it'll be, they're both like, say, like I've had animals where I've helped them because they've been there, and then the owner has got another animal, like another rescue, say. So, it's teaching that new animal that they're not replaced, and that explaining to them that, and it takes time then for the animal to get used to the new one. So that would be ways. So basically, grounding and good structure. So, if it's a dog, or even cats still need training to some extent. I also work with horses, and I also work with birds. So depends on the animal, I guess, to the structure, but training is an important thing. And I can give some suggestions with training, but I would always suggest, if they have not, to get a dog trainer. I have studied some dog training as well, so I can help in some aspects, but it does need to be that, because it's not fair to expect. The animal doesn't know if you don't teach it. So giving it structure, and also teaching them that as the owner, the animal is safe. So the owner really does need to learn to manage their energy, and so that the animal feels safe. Yeah.
Yeah, and you picked up on a really good point. I was just thinking about how that domestication of animals, right? So they've originally from the wild, and they've come into become more domesticated, and that degree of domestication depends on the breed. So certain breeds have are just in a transition of domestication. Like I'm thinking of the husky and those sort of dogs, and on top of that, it's that now owners are allowed to have pets in apartments. So if I'm thinking of the grounding aspect, so connection with nature. So the typical Australian dream is to have a house and land, and so the dog would typically roam in the backyard and be grounded on a regular basis. But now where urbanization is forcing less, there's less land available, it's forcing us up, and the animals too also up into high rises. And so the animals are becoming less connected with nature, and so that would be certainly playing into you're probably seeing more cases of where that grounding needs to be applied, particularly for animals that are all day in an apartment locked up whilst the owner's working, and then the owner could be too busy and has to continue to work in the evening, and so that stress is both, or it could be the mischievous cat that you mentioned, like it's sort of the cat just wants to get out, like it's needs some grounding.
Yeah, that's right. So, going outside and taking them. But yeah, if you can't do that, then I give other ways and tools to do that. There's also like essential oils, making sure that they're safe. And I will always, suggest which ones are for dogs and cats, and they should never be in a closed room with any essential oils, like flower essences. So there are many different things or tools that I can give depending on what it is. And sometimes it will even be referring them to, like I said, with the dog trainer or another professional that is beyond what I can do. Not that I will still do the work within my capability, but they may need somebody else, so they have a team of people, and because that's how changes happen. So that will be sometimes too able to do that and help them as well.
And what about music and sound? Like I'm thinking, like you mentioned, the flower essences and essential oils, it comes from nature, it's derived from nature. And so it does help with grounding, absolutely. There's strong science behind that. What about music? Because it's also, you can listen to ocean sounds and waterfalls and birds. Does that help animals, like pets?
Yes, that is another thing that I may suggest. Music, I don't know, I love music myself, so I will often play, certain healing music throughout the day when I'm doing my sessions as well, just even in the background. So that can definitely be something that I would suggest to even put on for clients.
Yeah, well, it helps us, it helps ground us, in terms of, if we want to wind down in the evening, it's great to play some nature sounds or just relaxing music to really help level us. So I can imagine it would be the same for the pets.
Yeah, a lot of the time that's the thing. It's not sometimes so different to what we would do for ourselves. So then and that's why usually everyone in the whole house benefits. Or, I will also, because I offer healing sessions separately to the communication, I may, and I will always give a few options and leave it up to the client as to what they choose. So I like to be able to, because it gives them control and guidance, and then they make the decision. So even I would suggest like that a healing would help. So they might buy or might get certain packages of healings for me, where they might do 1, 2, or 3, or there are clients that I do for their animals. Like I have one that I do healings pretty much every week for him, because he's had 3 ACL surgeries on his left leg. And so the difference in that is amazing, like how much better he feels. And so I can give from the animal, because everything I get is from the animal's perspective. So I can give a pain level from the animal's perspective. So that's really good when it comes to surgery or an illness for an animal. And they can't always tell you, like, and I don't replace a vet, so they'll go to the vet and then have that information. So that's sort of that gap where I can fill in and also give them, and that can give a lot of relief and comfort to the owner, knowing that, okay, they're taking this medication, and is it, I can tell sometimes might make the animal feel a bit sick in the stomach, but it's from the medication. So at least if the owner knows that, they can ensure that they are giving them food, or it just gives them an idea of how their animal's feeling, which is very helpful when you're in, you're already in a stress state about your animal. So that's where I also help a lot as well, and with passed over animals.
Awesome. I'm also thinking there's a lot of new pet owners out there that would be listening in because of the pandemic, created a lot of loneliness, and it created a pet boom. So lot more dogs and cats, or owners of dogs and cats. And so in wrapping this up, I'd love, for you to share some key tips for new pet owners as to how they can, just create the best environment, that bringing the pet into their family, and making it so it's harmony, as opposed to a new member to the family, and it's, oh no, it's they're not fitting in, and so yeah, really keen for you to share some tips as to how new pet owners can really hit the ground running, so to speak.
Yeah, and that is quite a big issue. And then if they're going back to work, and leaving the animal alone where they've had them all the time, with the animal, it's a big adjustment. So some great tips would be allowing for time for adjustment, and knowing that that is normal, and I guess the expectation not being too high, but doing dog training is very important. Like all dogs, even if doesn't matter what type of dog, they should all have some basic training, because as they get older, it starts from a young age, but as they get older, and that's when sometimes the problems get worse. So if we can do that in the beginning, always giving, I guess, an animal its own certain space as well, so it can go to that, because it's like us, we like our sort of safe place. So I think that's really important for animals, to have a place that they can go to feel safe, away from anything else. And exercise, and if they can't get exercise, then maybe finding somebody else that can do that for their animal, because that can eliminate, because if they have a lot of energy, that can eliminate issues, and obviously puppies and even kittens will be a bit mischievous, so I think expecting that they will be, with cats, training using like maybe a spray water bottle or something like that to train them, as well. And but also making time to spend one-on-one time with the animal each day, even if it's 5 or 10 minutes. Like it's not fair to get an animal and then not make time for it. So that's a big responsibility, and just being able to do that, because that's ultimately, animals just love that. So time off your mobile phone. If you're walking them, don't be on your mobile phone. Like, be present with your animal and just spend that time with them. Yeah, training them and just being with them. I think that's really important. Fantastic. And if you're not sure, seek out a professional dog trainer, me as an animal communicator, or someone that can help before it gets really, out of control.
I think all those tips you've just provided are also applicable to us humans. I could relate to everything you said in terms of, first of all, allow time for the adjustments. So yes, we've got, people going back to work, and so their routine's been disturbed, and they've got to create a new routine, and the animal needs time for that adjustment as well as the human. And as you said, time to exercise, important for the animal, also important for the human. And then that thing of being present in what you do. And I think that's a key one, because it's, often we can have people, together present, or, physically present, but emotionally and mentally not. Because people are on their devices, whereas, you said, get off your device, connect and be present with that person you're with, or animal. So I think, everything you've just said is equally applicable to humans, and great tips. I really like them. There's just, I had another thought. I can't forget about those owners that have had to say goodbye, or know that the days coming, where they'll need to say goodbye to their pet, and that can be heartbreaking for the owner, and obviously hard, difficult time, for the pet, because they're going through a life transition. So how do you help in that way with, either animals that have just passed or animals that are, going towards their end of life?
Okay. And as an animal communicator, this is some of my favorite work. I love all the work, but being highly sensitive and being able to hold the space. So how I help is it's really what drives me a lot to do the work that I do. So with an animal that has passed over, I'm able to, there's a lot, sometimes can be guilt. It didn't go the way the owner sort of perceived it to go. So they need some closure. And sometimes it can even be a year later that they'll come back. So there's sort of no time frame, because, I can work with the photo, and I will connect obviously with the spirit or the soul, however you want to sort of explain that, of the animal, obviously, because they're not in their physical body anymore. But our souls are eternal. And so, and often we can even have past lives with animals. So that's going into like a lot more. But so once we have a connection with an animal, we are connected with them for life, just as we are with a person. So that's where I can support holding space for that person. Sometimes them just being able to talk to me in a session and get information from the animal is so healing. Like I had an amazing client a few weeks ago, a gentleman, and it was very rewarding. And he felt so much better a week later, because he just had some answers to questions that he wasn't able to ask before his animal, like his dog, passed away. So that's where I can kind of help with passed over animals. And a lot of people want to know, are they in pain anymore and things like that. So I can ask those questions, because it's heartbreaking and very traumatic. And so animals transitioning, where they may be elderly or with an illness, how I can help is asking the animal what would make them more comfortable, what are their favorite things. So it would be like with a person, if they're nearing their end of days, like honoring what they would like. So it's basically being able to ask that, then giving that to the client, then they're able to do that, which is really great to be able to do that for the animal. I can also ask a pain level from the animal's perspective. So I can, and how the animal is feeling. So I can give the owner that, and they can also use that information to make a decision with the vet about whether they may euthanize or they may wait longer. So that information is like really helpful. So I love that I can do that. And just sometimes being there to listen to that owner, because sometimes people outside that they may know around them are judging them, and everyone's telling them, do this, do that. And that can be really overwhelming for somebody. So I just hold space for them, and they're able then to have a clear mind to be able to make a good decision, rather than being bombarded with opinions and really that are not helpful. If that, yeah.
I can totally relate to what you're saying, because personally I've been in those situations as a kid growing up with pets, and discussions with the vets around euthanizing them, and really upsetting times, and it's, I think, really helpful for owners to know that you exist, because often it's a hard decision for them to make, as to they get really emotionally attached to the animals, and don't want to let them go, but you're able to check in with the animal and see if they're ready to go, and the pain's too high and they just want to allow the owner some freedom and to move on with their lives. The animal can certainly convey that back to you, and you could help the owner make that decision, which is really helpful, because it's a tough decision to make.
It is so tough. And obviously when it's our own animal, and I'm the same, I have animals too, and I have experienced all of the things that I help my clients with, I've experienced them myself. So, I know how it feels for them, but being a professional, I'm there to hold space. So I can, I have the tools to manage my emotions and be that that ear for the client and support, and not have that emotional attachment to be able to, because obviously they do. So I don't have that in that situation. So being separate from that is great. It's like when we go to any therapist or anyone for guidance, when they don't have that emotional attachment, although I'm empathetic, I'm not emotionally attached. So I'm able to, separate from that and give them the perspective without, so it's good.
I think it's fantastic that owners have that level of support from you, and it's very mutual, and you can just allow the communication to flow between the animal and the owner know exactly where their pet is in at that point in time, and same with respect to the animal. And so you're essentially convening that, allowing that conversation to flow, and then the owner to make a more informed decision based on the animal's wishes and needs. So I think it's wonderful that you can do that. So really appreciate your time today, Kelly, all the wisdom you've shared. And I'm sure the listeners are, thinking, well, I could probably do with some help with respect to your services. So how can they best connect with you, Kelly?
The best way, I am on social media and I share a lot of information and reviews also on how I help animals, because sometimes the best way for me to show what I can do is by how I've helped other people. So also I have a website, so that would be the best way where people can find information, look at the different sessions and things that I offer. They can send me an email through there, or they can call me, because sometimes people are not sure what session might be the best for them. So that way I'm happy to always talk through and, give suggestions, always asking what the client wants, because obviously I want to meet their needs. And that's what I ultimately aim for. And always putting the dog's interest, or the animals, whichever it is, dog, cat, work with all of them. Interest. So that would be the best way to contact me.
I'll put the links to your social media and website in the show notes, so listeners and viewers can go straight to the show notes and straight directly to those links to find you. And thanks again, Kelly. I really appreciate your time. And for the listeners, if you've liked the episode, please share it with others that whom it could benefit, because we need to get the word out there that Kelly's around for these owners that are distressed with their pets and going through some hard times around decision making. Kelly is the person that can really help them through these difficult times and take the stress out of their lives. So also help with their overall well-being and the family unit's well-being and the pet's well-being. So everyone wins. And so please share it with others to further get the word out there. If you've liked the episode, please leave a review. It certainly helps get the episode rated higher. And stay tuned for more insightful episodes of Me and My Health Up.